Hello, I am Natalia Wojtkowiak and you are listening to the Manage the Problem podcast. I create this place for owners and decision makers of small and medium-sized manufacturing companies. In this podcast, I talk openly and specifically about the problems of production industry. I explain complex issues related to production management in simple language. I advise on how to create optimized processes and effective teams. This is podcast created by practitioner for practitioners. Let me be your guide and the Manage the Problem boat that will take us to the waters of practical knowledge and proven solutions. I hope you are ready. Manage the problem.
You know, guys, I wasn't planning on recording this episode, for sure not now. But within the last week, two of my dear colleagues called me. One is co-owner of IT startup. Another one is director of organization and structurization in one of the production companies. And they both call it about the same thing. The companies they co-create are going through their first serious crisis or a crisis that may wipe them out. Since I have known these gentlemen for years, we have provided advices and help to each other many times. Now it was my turn to support them. They wanted to talk in friendly, calm and substantive way with someone who understands such topics, communication, creating action plan, and the actual implementation of these activities. I turned out that I was one of them. And thank you for trust. So what do when crisis knocks on the door? Open, let in. How to present the crisis to the team. How not introduce crisis to co-workers. More on this in today's episode of Manage the Problem. And at the beginning, I would like to add that both of them encouraged me to share my observation and conclusions in this podcast episode. But to respect their privacy and the company confidentiality, I will not provide any more details that could harm anyone. So let's focus on general tactics, actions, and mistakes. Crisis in company is possible. We don't want it to ever appear at all, but we cannot rule out that will never appear. And in general, I have the impression that in 2019 decade of crisis began, which is difficult or fatally dangerous for many industries. And I noticed that crisis in manufacturing companies is a word so widely and incorrectly used that it doesn't make an impression on anyone, and sometimes it should. And using the word crisis as a synonym for a problem is abuse, and introducing atmosphere of tension as in crisis situation, crisis time, just to solve the problem faster to motivate someone. It is only a manipulation that quickly backfires. Moreover, crisis management next to chaos management is one of the most common diseases in our industry. Unfortunately, still. I would start by saying that having crisis and serious problems, it's a normal thing in a life of production companies, although still not normalized in a fabulous space of social media such LinkedIn on Instagram. And what matters isn't whether we have them, because we have always problems, bigger, smaller, but they are there. But what matters is how we approach them, what we call them, how we work to solve them, and whether we draw lessons from them for the future. In my opinion and experience, it's important how we present the crisis. Because you can talk about it as a time of trial, or you can call it as a losing battle. Where's the difference? On the feelings and attitude of co-workers. And I'm not talking about manipulation, missing the truth, or sugarcoating the problems. Absolutely not. I say go to your team with the facts that then can influence and goals then can achieve, and not come with emotions, opinions, and matters that they beyond their reach because they don't concern a management board or political or legal topics. What next? Clear information that is reflected in the facts. We have a crisis because, and here you provide reliable information about what causes this crisis. And in this situation, first of all, the team isn't to blame, but they know that there is a group of problems that in directly influence the company to be in this place. There will be definitely the emotions, questions, and uncertainty. Let it be heard, but control it, please. How? Showing the goals that will lead us out of this situation, and ask the team for advice and ideas on the way to achieve them. But also, you need to have at least a few initial ideas. Otherwise, when the message is full of emotions, panic, and sense of purposelessness, it can only cause one thing: an avalanche. An avalanche of fear, nervousness, and gossip. You won't have to wait long for notice of termination to appear on your desk. Yet it is natural and understandable move. However, it often loses for company, for production, because they lose important and value people. And the market doesn't waiting. It's an opportunity for them, and they will gladly accept them. If we are not talking about critical situation, for example, that we have to close the company overnight and fire everyone, but we are talking about situation where there is still room for action, it is important, really important, to build atmosphere on security, purpose, and unity. And I often notice in production companies that only a common enemy gives direction and unites. And this is at the managerial level, which is very atomized in our industry, and at the manager team level, which often is still resembles at a farm and serfdom. And if later this motivation and unification isn't used, isn't taken further, isn't taken care of, isn't appreciated in the better times, and the level of employee-manager relationship, there is remains and the bad taste and the feeling of taking advantage of the moment and the lack of trust. That is why I talk so much about building healthy, supportive, and developing relationships between the manager and the team, and creating a team of managers. Because trust is a currency that never loses value. Anyway, I already talked about it in episode 2, the fish roots from the head. Managers must create a team that supports each other and complements each other with competences. In another accident, this contributes to political games between managers and their departments, shifting responsibilities and looking for guilty. And this task doesn't fall on managers, but on their managers. Because when we have a crisis in company, we should play for one goal, stick to established rules and information. And in such situations, there is often a person who either cannot cope with the whole situation or wants to win something, but not really sure what. And when such person doesn't quite understand the message, information intended for decision makers and management boards, rumors and conspiracy theories spread around the company at the speed of light. She goes into details with people who shouldn't know them, does some strange consultation with her favorite employees, shares a little information here, a little there, but don't tell anyone, She complains about how stressful and difficult meetings are. All this not only worsen a difficult and tense situation, but also affects other discreet and composed managers, teammates. Yes, I have had experience with this type of manager. I remember what this person did and they said, and I know that I should do exactly opposite. A very valuable lesson. I believe that in such situation you should also trust the team more. After all, it is the group of specialists who know the topic better than you and me, can provide very interesting solutions. And this should be listened about to check whether they will fit into the holistic puzzles on the management board table. But then you also need to appreciate these ideas and commitment. And I noticed that very often bosses and leaders are afraid to appreciate someone or distinguish them, especially in someone performed great in a crisis situation. Leaders with a small mindset, poor mindset, are afraid of being replaced or pushed into the background. But in my opinion, they forget about one even more key issues. That this is very good promotion for her team. This increases the morale of entire group and motivates them. There are leaders for a peace and war. And just because someone was able to lead a company processes and team through the crisis doesn't mean that they will be able to continue doing so in time of peace. These are groups of often different skills and decision making. And end this topic today, I would like to share 2 observations with you. First, that I don't know a company that doesn't have a twists and turns in its history. And we should remember that time turns a crisis into anecdote that it's great to tell years later. Over the years, the crisis becomes a lesson, a story. A few people remember what it was really like. And another issue is whether we drew conclusions from this situation for the future to be more vigilant, preventive, and stronger.
Check next episode of Manage the Problem podcast. I will also be grateful for any substantive feedback, positive comments, and sharing this episode with others in our industry. I want this podcast to be a value and interesting for you. You can find me on LinkedIn. See you in next episode. Manage the Problem. Natalia Wojtkowiak.